to review really quickly what we talked about last time with regard to the different roles that are built out of our behavioral styles. The first role we see is a conductor, and that's somebody who is what it sounds like, makes things happen, organizes people. You sit over here, you go there, you do this. A persuader is somebody who convinces people to take a certain course of action, and that's another one. A promoter is somebody who doesn't necessarily persuade people to take a certain course of action, but will be the evangelist, will be the person who says, this is great because. A relator will try to get people to get along. A supporter will try to help you do what it is that you want to do without necessarily bringing any of their own feelings or agenda to the thing. A coordinator will look at all the different bits and pieces and people that are involved in a project or a thing to get done, and the coordinator will help to pull those things together so that stuff happens on time, so that the toast comes out of the toaster the same time the eggs come out of the frying pan, so to speak. An analyzer won't do a whole lot of things necessarily, but they will keep an eye on things and see how things are progressing. So, hey, it looks like, Mr. Coordinator, you really didn't get the toast to come out at the same time as the eggs. The toast was a little bit cold by the time the eggs came out, and I'm looking at that, and because I am analyzing the data, I know that this is the case. And then an implementer, our last person, is somebody who gets things done, and that implementer lives up here in between the dominant person and the compliant person, the analyzer person and the conductor. The implementer knows what needs to get done, has command of the data, of the information, and isn't troubled at all telling people what to do and making things happen. And so that's an implementer, which is a great role to have around. So those are the things, the 8 different behavioral types, and I like to color them so that we can really get a picture of what they are, and then so that's kind of how it starts to look. And so the dominant person covers these roles: highly conductor oriented person, and then partly implementer, partly persuader, depending on what their their sort of secondary characteristic is. The implementer would look like that and fit in that role there. A relator, coordinator, supporter would fit into that category, and then our analyzer, our sort of our bean counter, our number cruncher, comes into that area there. Yeah, that's about right. That looks about right. All right. So these are kind of the places you're going to find folks, and if you can figure out what the behavioral style is of the people that you're working with, or if you can figure out what the behavioral style of yourself is, you're going to find that it's really easy to know the things to do that are going to get you the best results in your work, in your project, in your life, in whatever it is. So this deal here, this little model here, this what let's call the wheel, that model is a really important thing to know and to understand. Breaking it down to its most simple component, what way might we be able to really practically apply this information? And so let's kind of start there. How can I make any use of this is usually a pretty good question. So let's say that we have a timeline here, right? And it goes this way, and this is what let's call the end, and this is what let's call the beginning. All right? So we've got a timeline, and or we can call it a task or a thing to do, or we can call it, let's say we have a project. Okay? We've got a project. Our project has a beginning, it has an end, and then here are some things along the way. We can call them tasks. If you're a project management person, you'll understand tasks and milestones and finish to start relationships and all that kind of stuff, none of which matters to this conversation. What we're talking about here is not so much a project, but what let's call project communication, right? So I have something to do, project communication, there. I need something done, and we were talking about this in a workshop the other day where we were doing an event. We were throwing a party, and we had this thing going on at the party where we had the end result was that we needed 50 chairs delivered to a party, right? Now, different kind of people are going to need to process that information. And so that was the end result. The 50 chairs delivered was the end result. Let me see if I can draw a chair. Boom, 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 boom. All right, there we go. So there's my chair. And I needed 50 of those, right? 50 chairs, 50, 50, 50, right? And lots of chairs, okay? 50 chairs is what I needed delivered to my event because I was having a party and I'm an event planning company and I needed to get my 50 chairs there. So depending on your communication style, this may or may not be enough information for you to get what it is that you need done. And so we started talking about in this meeting with people who are in the event business, and they were talking about communication style and operations and getting things done. And what we found was that there were people in the group where if we said, hey, I need 50 chairs delivered to the event at 3 o'clock, that was all the information that they would need to have. And then what they would do is they would go about achieving the result of 50 chairs. And we can even, if we want to, we can even put, we can even put a timeline to it, and we'll call this, 9 a.m., right? So we've got a timeline. We've got 9 a.m. here. We've got 3 p.m. there. The result, 50 chairs, 3 p.m. at the event. Along here, if I go, along here, if I say, or at 9 a.m., if I say to somebody, I need 50 chairs at the event at 3 o'clock, certain people are going to respond well to that sort of request, the result. Particularly a dominant person. Let me do this. Particularly a dominant person, a high D person, doesn't mind if you start at the end, right? So I'm a highly dominant person, as we reviewed back there. I think we went somewhere in here, right? And so there's my disc score, right? So I get 100 on the D and 100 on the I, right? And so I'm a highly dominant person. So if you skip to the end with me, I'm totally fine with that, right? So you come along and you say, hey, Will, I need 50 chairs at the event by 3 o'clock. No problem. I got it. And what I will do is I will apply the way that I'm dominant and the way that I'm able to influence people. And I would say, hey, Frank, I need help moving these 50 chairs. And along the way, what the dominant person is going to do is the dominant person is going to kind of gather up different pieces of information about the project as he goes. And a dominant person is going to kind of work backwards to the information as they go through and get the result of the 50 chairs, right? And so I'm going to start at the end, and then as I go through it, I'm going to kind of learn what I need to go along the way. And for me, that's the way I like to do it. I've got a lot of energy. I'm happy and I'm comfortable working in that role. And then if you also want to go back and look at me on the steadiness side, 23, I'm really okay, right? If you look at my steadiness style, I've got a 23 there. I'm okay with changing as I go and improvising and all of that. And then also I only get a 3 on the compliance. And so I'm also kind of okay breaking the rules and working outside the system and just doing what I got to do to get it done. And that's why a D person likes to start at the end and move to the beginning. Now let's go and talk about another kind of person. What kind of person might want to start at the beginning of a thing, where you would go and you would say to them, hey, Marty, for example, Marty, we've got a client, and the client is having an event, and the event is at this location, and they ordered 100 red chairs. We only delivered 50 red chairs, and as it turns out, we also delivered 50 blue chairs. So what we need to do is we need to go retrieve the 50 blue chairs that are wrong and get the 50 red chairs over to the venue in time for the event, which starts at 3 p.m. Oh, and by the way, Marty, here's the order number, and here's the name of the drivers who are on the truck, and here's a map with directions to the venue, and the chairs are located in aisle 34, bin 7 of warehouse 2, right? So what am I doing when I present the information in that way, instead of saying 50 chairs, 3 p.m., get them to the event? What I'm doing is I'm starting at the beginning, and starting at the beginning of a thing usually means that I'm supplying a lot of data, a lot of information, and what I'm doing is I'm building my case, and I'm telling a story with lots of information, and the person who likes that approach the best is going to be somebody who is a compliance-oriented person, right? And so a high C person, remember that's the analyzer. Go back here. Right? Our high C person is an analyzer and a coordinator and maybe an implementer, but that person needs lots of data, right? If we go all the way back to the beginning of our thing here, we go back to our compliance, data-oriented. They like to evaluate the information. They're slow to believe things, right? And so if I'm trying to get the high C or the compliance-oriented person to get on board with this result, they really need to come by the information on their own, at their own speed, and based on the data. They're not going to just believe you because you said it. The other kind of person who's going to kind of want to start at or near the end is an influence-oriented person, and the other person who's going to want to start at or near the beginning is going to be a steadiness-oriented person. But what you can do here, if you have this information and you understand how these things work, is you can from a communication perspective, you can sort of divide the world into two kinds of people. You can say, hey, there are people that I work with where I'm better off when I'm asking something from them if I start at the beginning. And there are people, the other kind of people that I work with, or people in the world, if I want to get something done, is I skip to the end. And if I know what kind of person you are, and I'm able to identify that either by having you take one of these DISC assessments and really, really dig into it and learn a whole lot along the way, or just by learning some things about your behavior that I can observe. What are some of the ways that you behave that I can look at and know, or have a very good guess as to whether you're a high D, high I, or a high C, high S sort of a person? If I can figure those things out about you, then when I'm asking you for something, I really know what the best way is to communicate with you. Should I skip to the end and tell you the result, or should I start at the beginning? And if you can learn to do this, no matter what your style is, no matter what way you prefer to do it, if you can do it this way, what you're going to find is that the speed at which you're able to get things done in your organization, the efficiency with which you're able to communicate with your team, is going to increase absolutely massively. And so I think in the next one of these videos, what we should talk about is we should talk about different ways that we're able to identify, without giving somebody a full-on DISC assessment, different ways that we're able to identify whether somebody is a dominance-oriented, influence, stability, or compliance, so that we know just real quick whether I should start at the beginning or skip to the end.